Here's an IFR scenario that you can practice in an aviation training device. This short cross-country exercise from Watsonville, California to Lincoln, California can help you learn about several subtleties of instrument flying, from takeoff to touchdown. This simulated flight is an exercise in IFR flight planning for a Stage 2 or Stage 3 instrument student, an IPC customer, or an instrument flight instructor candidate. Key elements include IFR cross-country flight planning, operations in unfamiliar airspace, preferred and TEC routes versus direct routes, planning for alternates, IFR departure procedures, and IFR approaches. Of course, in an ATD, it's not necessary to fly the entire Enroute portion, although flying a segment or two provides opportunities for practicing avionics setup, diversions, and so forth. Here's a look at the direct route shown on an IFR low-altitude Enroute chart. Note the T routes in the Bay Area. This is a good opportunity to discuss T routes. See AIM 5-3-4, Airways and Route Systems. The flight begins at Watsonville, California, on the coast south of the Bay Area. Watsonville is a non-towered airport with Class G airspace at the surface. Portions of the San Francisco Class B airspace lie north of the airport, and the Monterey Class C airspace is just south of Watsonville. The destination is Lincoln, California, another non-towered airport with Class G at the surface. It lies between Class C airspace at Sacramento International and Beale Air Force Base. When planning a route through busy airspace, your first instinct is to check for preferred IFR routes. Information about these routes is in the chart supplement. But in Northern California, there is another option for low-altitude IFR flights. In 3 areas of the U.S., another system of commonly used IFR routes is also available: Tower En-Route Control, or TEC routes. Here are overviews of the areas covered by TEC routes in Northern California and Southern California. TEC routes are also designated for airspace in the Northeast and New England. Details about TEC routes are described in the chart supplement. TEC routes appear in Section 4, Associated Data of the chart supplement, the same section as preferred IFR routes and Q routes for high-altitude RNAV traffic. The basic description of TEC routes and the details associated with their use appear in the Introduction to the TEC section in the chart supplement. Here are some key points about TEC routes. They allow flight beneath the en-route structure. You don't talk to a center. TEC routes remain within approach control airspace. Other airways, or direct routes, which appear to be more direct between 2 points, may take you out of approach control airspace, causing delays or other complications. For example, if you want to fly from Santa Monica to Long Beach, filing direct probably won't help. This is a TEC route for piston-powered aircraft, and it's probably what you'll get. Using the TEC routes helps you prepare for and fly such short hops in complex airspace. In fact, you may want to consider using TEC routes even when you're flying VFR. Note that not all airports served by TEC routes appear on the regional maps. For example, Watsonville is on the map, but your destination, Lima Hotel Mike, just south of Beale Air Force Base, Bravo Alpha Bravo, isn't. If your flight includes an airport that is near one of the designated airports, check the TEC listings. You may find a route that applies to your flight. Specific TEC routes are listed in the chart supplement by area. In this case, Watsonville is included in the Monterey area. This close-up view shows a TEC route for a flight from Watsonville to Lincoln. Each route has an ID, in this case Mike Romeo Yankee 01. In the past, you could file the route ID instead of the detailed route. But for now, at least in California, the guidance in the chart supplement tells you to file the actual route using VORs and other fixes, not the route ID. The actual routing via VORs, intersections, and airways, as appropriate, appears next to the coded description. The TEC system in California uses letter codes to designate the types of aircraft that can use the route. The route altitude is in the far right column. Most light piston-powered aircraft are Class Quebec. This route from Watsonville to Lincoln via Salinas, Victor 111, Modesto, and Linden fits our aircraft type, Quebec. The altitude is 6,000 feet. The Route Advisor feature in ForeFlight includes TEC routes. Here's the TEC route for our flight as a recommended route in ForeFlight. You should compare the recommended routes to the TEC routes and choose a TEC route if one is available. Note, however, that GPS navigators like the Garmin GNS and GTN series do not list TEC routes as airways or procedures for you to load by name. You must enter the fixes and airways in your clearance as you normally do. If you use ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot and have a Bluetooth connection to the GPS navigator in the panel, you can send the route to the panel. Here's that TEC route as seen on sectional and IFR low-altitude Enroute charts. Filing any other route between these two airports probably will result in your having to copy a full route clearance. You probably can't get a direct route, even VFR, because that path would cut across the busy San Jose Class C and other airspace. Note also that the difference between the TEC route, 164 nautical miles, and the direct route, 120 nautical miles, is only about 40 miles, and that assumes you don't get any shortcuts from ATC when you're airborne. Back to Watsonville. It's a non-towered airport. Recall that it has Class G airspace at the surface. It's close to the Monterey Class C airspace south. The San Francisco Class B and San Jose Class C airspace are nearby north and northeast, and the Santa Cruz Mountains are another obstacle north. How can we depart IFR? The entry for Watsonville in the chart supplement provides hints. The airport is served by approaches, so at least a text departure procedure will be available. The communications section includes both a frequency for NorCal approach and a telephone number for clearance delivery. The TPP notes that Watsonville doesn't have a text departure procedure. Instead, it refers you to published departure procedures. Two DPs are charted for Watsonville. The Garlic 1, an RNAV procedure, which you will probably receive if you file as a PBN RNAV-capable aircraft, and the Watsonville 4, a conventional obstacle departure procedure that requires only a VOR receiver to fly to Salinas. The Watsonville 4 is a straightforward departure procedure, but there's potential for confusion. The procedure calls for a climb and then, depending on the runway used for takeoff, a turn to intercept either the Salinas 309 or 293 radial and track it inbound to Salinas. The Garlic 1 does take you out over Monterey Bay, so perhaps the Watsonville 4 direct to Salinas is the better choice in a single-engine piston. But in an aviation training device, the Garlic 1 offers opportunities to practice flying a charted RNAV procedure, including proceeding direct to specific fixes or activating a leg as if ATC vectored you on a shortcut to join the airway. You're filed as a PBN RNAV aircraft, so the computer will probably assign the Garlic 1 departure procedure with the Salinas transition. It's helpful to use the annotation feature in ForeFlight, or its counterpart in other EFB apps, to highlight the route you'll fly and to mark altitude constraints and other notes. Even on RNAV procedures, add the frequency for VORs that you can use for situational awareness. And compare the procedure chart with the corresponding VFR sectional or terminal chart to help you visualize terrain and other hazards that may be factors immediately after takeoff. The Enroute portion of the flight is straightforward. The entire trip remains within NorCal approach airspace, and if traffic allows, you'll probably get vectors to shorten the flight. You can use GPS or VORs to navigate the route. But this is an IFR flight, and other considerations such as alternates come into play. As noted earlier, the destination, Lincoln, is another non-towered airport with Class G airspace at the surface. It lies near two Class C areas. Here's the chart supplement listing for Lincoln. It includes notes about hazards such as skydiving and powered parachute operations. The communications section includes a frequency for NorCal approach and a phone number that you can use to close an IFR flight plan on the ground. Lincoln is at the north end of the Central Valley, and it's susceptible to fog and low ceilings at certain times of the year. The airport is served by both an ILS and two RNAV GPS approaches with LPV minimums. But today there's a catch. The ILS runway 15 is out of service. Fortunately, you may not have to fly far to find a suitable alternate. Auburn, Alpha Uniform November, is only a few miles away, but its field elevation is 1,538 feet, about 1,400 feet higher than Lincoln. It often sits above the low clouds that keep the valley in low IFR conditions. If a large weather system were creating IFR throughout Northern California, you would have to search farther afield for a suitable alternate. But for this scenario, assume Auburn will work. Auburn has an RNAV GPS approach serving runway 7. The procedure has LPV minimums to a DA of about 300 feet HEL, with a visibility requirement of 1¼ miles. Auburn is allowed as an alternate with the standard 802 minimums for non-precision approaches. Even with WAS, you can't treat APVs as precision approaches when contemplating alternates. If you fly approaches as a Category B aircraft, at or above 90 knots indicated airspeed, the forecast weather must be at least 902 to file Auburn as an alternate. For more information about filing alternates with GPS or WAS, see AIM 1-1-17, Global Positioning System, and AIM 1-1-18, Wide Area Augmentation System. Now that we've planned the flight, let's review a summary of training objectives for flying the scenario. These include flying a departure procedure out of Watsonville, loading procedures and transitions, activating legs if vectored, planning an approach, and activating legs or proceeding direct to an initial fix to activate an approach. Before you jump into the ATD, here's a preview of the flight using the Garmin PC Trainer Suite. It's a free simulation available for Windows computers. The simulation shows off the latest Garmin avionics, but the logic the units use is common to all Garmin navigators, starting with the GNS series. The PFD and maps also follow the presentations used in Garmin G5, G500, and G1000 displays. It's a great tool for demonstrating and practicing procedures. You can also practice with the free Garmin GTN Trainer app for iOS, available in the App Store. Let's begin on the ground at Watsonville, planning to depart runway 20. It's helpful to load a flight plan by first entering the departure and destination, and then filling in the details of the route. We have been cleared as filed via the TEC route with the Garlic 1 departure, Salinas transition, climb via the SID, which has a top altitude of 5,000 feet, possibly to avoid conflicts with nearby airspace. When we're on our way and in radar contact, ATC may vector us off the departure procedure and clear us to join the TEC route and climb to 6,000. All Garmin navigators use the same sequence to load departures. The process is just more visual and easier on a GTN or other touchscreen navigator. Select the departure airport in the flight plan, not strictly necessary but a good habit, and select Load Procedure. To load a departure procedure or SID, select Departure. Select the name of the procedure you are cleared to fly. Select or confirm the departure runway. Select or confirm the transition, the end point of the departure where you join the Enroute structure. In this case, Sierra, November, Sierra, the Salinas VOR. Confirm that the sequence of waypoints in the procedure matches your clearance, and load the departure. Note that the flight plan page shows the procedure title, and that the first leg of this departure, as is often the case, is a heading to altitude leg. Garmin has published a free guide about the types of legs used in instrument procedures and how to recognize and fly them when using Garmin navigators. The document is a free PDF that you can download from the Garmin website. Now load the en route portion of the flight from Salinas to the destination, Lincoln. Select Salinas, and because the GTN supports loading airways, add Victor 111 to the route. Note that if your clearance includes a T-route, you can load these RNAV airways, like Victor Airways, by selecting the appropriate T-route identifier. After selecting an airway, choose the fix at which you'll leave the airway, in this case Modesto, Mike Oscar Delta. Confirm the airway route. Note that the GTN includes intersections along the airway, and then choose Load. Our clearance after Modesto is direct Linden VOR, so add that fix to the flight plan. Select Modesto. Choose Insert After, and enter the identifier for Linden. You can search for or type the 3-letter ID. Note that sometimes the identifier for a fix can match several locations worldwide. Make sure you select the correct NavAid, intersection, or RNAV fix. The bearing and distance information are helpful hints. The destination, Lincoln, is already in the flight plan, so take a moment to review the route on the map and confirm that it makes sense. Here's the sequence for loading the Garlic 1 departure from runway 20, as shown in the Garmin GNS 400-500 trainer. The logic is the same across Garmin units starting with the GNS series, through the G1000, GTN, and newer models. Verify the procedure by checking waypoints and comparing the map to the chart, and then add the airway fixes for the Enroute portion. The GNS series and earlier versions of the G1000 do not support loading airways, so you must include the VORs and intersections that define the airway route you want to fly, especially turn points. The airway segment for this flight is defined by Salinas and Modesto, so you need to add only those two VORs to describe the route. Finally, add the last leg, Modesto to Linden. If you have a modern PFD-MFD such as the G500 or G500 TXI, shown here, or G1000, verify the route on the map, heading and altitude bugs, the course deviation indicator, magenta for RNAV or GPS navigation, green for VOR localizer. Check the bearing pointers. Verify terminal enunciation, which is RNP1 or RNAV1 for departure procedures. If you have an autopilot and flight director, confirm that the correct modes are set. For example, heading for lateral guidance and indicated airspeed or flight level change for the climb. Note again that because the first leg of this departure is a heading leg, the HSI does not show a course deviation bar. In modern integrated systems, when you reach 700 feet, the CDI will appear so that you can fly the charted course to the first RNAV fix, CHAN. If your system does not send altitude data to the navigator, you must manually sequence to the next fix when you reach 700 feet. After takeoff and before reaching 700 feet, note that you're flying a heading to altitude leg. You do not see course guidance on the HSI. After climbing through 700 feet, however, the CDI appears, and you are flying a course to the first fix on the DP. If you are using the autopilot and flight director, confirm that you have selected nav or GPS steering mode to continue flying the departure. Now ATC has you in radar contact and gives you a shortcut, a vector towards Salinas. You'll join the leg between Wi-Fi and the Salinas VOR. Select Salinas and choose Activate Leg. Confirm the leg you want to join. The leg Wi-Fi Salinas becomes active, and the map shows the course that ATC is vectoring you to join. After you pass Salinas, the navigator sequences to a fix on Victor 111, and you're established on the Enroute portion of the flight. Here's the view on the PFD-MFD as you're cleared to 6,000. You've flown the Enroute portion, and ATC has vectored you off the airway toward the Marysville VOR to set up for an approach to Lincoln. The ILS is not available, but you prefer the RNAV runway 15 approach with LPV minimums. Load that approach. The default transition is vectors, but resist the temptation to choose that option even if ATC is vectoring you. Because you're approaching Lincoln from the southwest, the Marysville VOR is a logical choice for the transition, because loading that route preserves all the fixes in the procedure that ATC might use. Choose Marysville as the transition, the first fix on the approach, and load it into the flight plan. But don't activate the approach. Loading Marysville adds the procedure title to the flight plan, and all the fixes from Marysville through the missed approach hold now appear in the flight plan. With Marysville loaded, it's easy to proceed direct to Marysville, or to join any leg of the procedure up to the final approach fix. Now ATC says to expect vectors to join the final approach course. Activate the leg that ends at Cody, the final approach fix. With that leg active, here's the presentation on the map and the PFD. Eventually, ATC turns you toward the final approach course and clears you to 1,800 feet. Now ATC issues a final vector and clears you for the approach. Because you activated a leg below the procedure title, the approach is active. The navigator enunciates LPV and sequences through the fixes in the procedure. When you're established inbound, the PFD also enunciates LPV and displays a glide path. And the glide path guides you to the decision altitude. Here's the same sequence using the GNS 530W. First, load the approach with Marysville as the transition. When ATC begins vectoring you to the final approach course, activate the leg that ends at the final approach fix, Cody. As you join the final approach course, the GNS 530W automatically comes out of suspend mode and enunciates LPV, confirming that the approach is active. The GNS 530W sequences through the fixes along the final approach course, taking you to the runway and providing vertical guidance to the decision altitude. Here's the key to understanding the techniques described in this presentation. A procedure is essentially a series of waypoints. The same discussion applies to the Enroute section of flight plans, departure procedures, and arrivals. From a pilot's perspective, they're all sequences of waypoints. For more information, see Don't Activate Approaches and the links to related posts at my blog at Wordpress.